rätile hinge osta.
During a cold November day in an Estonian village, where the dead return, a man buys souls and applies them to his tools in order to make them come alive, so they can work for him in order for his family to survive the cold, harsh winter. Meanwhile, a young man attempts to use dark magic to make a young girl, who can turn into a werewolf by the way, fall in love with him. Then there are giant chickens, villagers trying to outsmart a plague, oh, and a very poetic scene with a melting snowman, and more. I'll pause for a second and let you digest what I just said, cause yes, that is pretty much what the film covers. I thought I had seen my fair share of weird, but I guess not. This is one of the more obscure films I've seen in a while. Welcome back to my channel, travelers. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are. Today I would like to share with you an absurd little dark romantic comedy called November. This film is weird. I've never seen anything quite like this before, and I've seen my fair share of weirdness along the way. Although the obscurity may not appeal to all, I believe it will captivate and keep you engaged if you decide to give this film a go, as there's nothing quite like this, I swear. Because within the opening scene, I guarantee you're going to laugh out loud. I know I did, due to how outrageous it is. You know what? Before we dive into the review, let me show you a brief clip for a better understanding of what I mean. What you just saw is a tool that is taken over by Soul and is asked to steal a cow for its owner. That's how the film begins. Watching the cow get propelled away is probably the most hilarious yet uncanny opening I've ever seen in a film, and that's pretty much the tone that follows. If you're not compelled by what you just saw, well, you can probably save your time and skip this film, cause that is pretty much the tone and style of November.
Tahaks sinna jalutama minna. Ilm on ju nii ilus.
Mis lilli sa vanamutt veel novembrikuus korjad?
November is an overall very great watch due to its unique and fresh approach to the dark comedy genre. For how over the top it is, it managed to keep its feet on the ground and not go overboard with its direction. It is some great cinematography that captures the cold, bleak winter, as well as a score that evokes emotions that perfectly fit the film. However, I did find the first half to be slightly segmented and hard to follow at times, as there was too much going on, and the cinematography, although great, I did wish it had displayed more of a contrast to allow the darker and lighter areas to stand out more. Directed by Sarnet, this is a fun little hidden gem that deserves to be checked out if you think you've seen it all. Let's first start by talking about its style and tone. November no doubt has a distinct way of displaying its eccentricness. There are moments throughout the film where, with its obscure content, there seemed no way it could stay composed without it feeling too goofy to take seriously, but somehow it managed to keep itself grounded, and I was really impressed. It attempts to push its ridiculousness right to the edge before pulling itself back and doing it all over again. Yes, not all of it works as expected, but for almost most of its runtime, I was fully invested, and there were moments that had me laughing out loud. I believe it is just absurd enough to keep even regular film goers engaged. Although I love its style and tone, at times November does tend to focus on its style over its story, especially in the first half. The first half was so focused on placing us in obscure situations that at times it has trouble balancing a story. There's so much going on in the film, it comes off as segmented and jumpy for the first half. Some segments also did come off as more interesting. Having a cow being propelled away by a tool most certainly piqued my interest, and there's pretty much no way you can top that with an opening like that. And in some form of way, yes. The film tries to incorporate other storylines like the love story, which at first didn't quite work. Would you prefer a story where tools come to life, or a love story? I prefer the latter. The love story does get so much better though. In fact, I would say it carries the last half of the film, as it plays out like a Shakespeare play. It is really rhythmical and poetic, and I loved it. The first half also had trouble weaving its multiple storylines together, hence the jumpiness. One second you're inside someone's home, then suddenly you're out in the woods with a different character. It feels kind of abrupt and doesn't quite flow fluidly. There were also too many characters, as director Sarnet does attempt to allow them to have their moments, but I had trouble following, and it took me a while before I could start putting the pieces together, like who is related to who, or how a person is connected. Don't worry, the last half does improve on what I had just mentioned. November's cinematography is quite mesmerizing at times, and there are lots to like about it. It beautifully captures the bleak and harsh winter the Estonians have to go through, and its bleakness reflects their struggle and survival. You feel like you're transported and trampling through the frigid weather with them, especially the more snowy landscapes. Although there's lots to praise about its exquisite icy cinematography, at times I do feel like the cinematography was slightly too washed out. It couldn't quite capture the contrast between its monochrome color palette. I wish there were more contrast between the lighter and darker areas. The snowy landscapes seem to be too overexposed, while the darker or nighttime scenes are too dark, and the focus point doesn't stand out due to being too similar to the darker areas in the frame. But overall, November's cinematography is still stunning to look at in many ways. The acting is overall decent. I don't know any of the actors, but I think they all did fairly well. As mentioned before, there are quite a fair share of characters, and director Sarnet does attempt to allow everyone to shine. However, the film's main focus wasn't on the characters' acting, but more on placing them in otherworldly situations.
On vaja anda. Minu peremees ei osanud tööd anda.
ja siis ma pöörasin tal pea kukla taha.
In that aspect, working with what they were given, I would say their acting was adequate and good enough. I like the chemistry between the characters' romance. There's a love triangle going on, and the characters involved have energy pulsating from them, even just through brief encounters. Also, I find it really funny how Diastro Lester, who is universally known for playing the notorious Human Centipede films, now plays a Christian. Sorry, but I just can't shake the image of you playing somebody else. The score choice for November also perfectly fits the tone of the film. Beneath its score, it unfolds and evokes notes of hope and melancholy, yet at the same time, it delivers a haunting feeling that is not tangible, but more like mist that slithers around. It feels like it is packaged inside a bubble, ready to pop and reveal all the pains and secrets the characters are holding, while also inducing a sense of poetry. I believe the score is a fitting choice. Hopeful, yet a sense of unease lingers in the air, where everything feels like it will slowly lead to something tragic. Overall, as a film, just like Possession, I believe it is not going to appeal to everyone, as after all, this is not a film like I've ever seen before, and I've seen over 4,000 films, and I can't seem to compare it to anything I've ever seen, so that is saying something. But in the end, if you decide to give this film a try, I believe you can find some enjoyment from it if you let go of your expectations and accept the film as it is. There are lots of deliciously fun moments to be found from it, especially from its dark comedy aspect, its exquisite cinematography, poetic score that speaks numbers, but most of all from its quirkiness. So if you're able to find a copy or come across this film, give it a go. Who knows, maybe you might just end up liking it just as much as I did. Have you seen November? Do you plan to see it? If you did, what did you think of it? Comment below and let me know, and as always, subscribe for your next travel ticket.